Welcome back to the Eric Krown crypto channel. Wishing you a happy start to Sunday morning. It's a big Sunday morning. It's a macro Sunday morning, and there's actually a few new things to be following up on that do have big implications for the next few weeks to come. And then, of course, a review of the higher term timeframes, the macro timeframes, if you will, as just want to see where things are kind of progressing in the bigger picture. Are things changing? Are they not? What essentially to expect right there. Anyways, other than that, I want to once again humbly request that if you find this content valuable, please do consider liking the video and then also hitting the bell icon as well, as I'm aware that that is very, very helpful to the channel. All right, sweet. Let's just jump right into it. Starting off with the big things, the heavy hitting things, starting off with the 2-day time frame setup right on over here. Why is that? Because we are starting to see volatility officially expand. I do think maybe one more period closing would probably seal the deal right here. But ultimately, this is essentially what we really want to be seeing for volatility expansion coming off of this particular setup. So what essentially we're looking at? Well, first things first, it is a volatility versus stochastic momentum signature. Volatility represented by this indicator, the BBWP indicator, essentially getting down towards extreme lows, which are defined as 10 percentile or lower. And then the expansion phase that naturally follows from those extreme lows has led to an average move of about 27% over the course of almost 19 days on average. And the direction of the stochastic also has been correct in getting the direction of that volatility expansion about 81.5% of the time. Now, we did just get another 2-day closure freshly last night. And what do you know? Bitcoin actually did close above the pivot, and it will be showing upside momentum. Bitcoin can maintain above this pivot, which is now 26,650. So I actually want to go into the data here because I've actually differentiated between long setups and short setups in this case, and seeing as this one does now see the 2-day timeframe stochastic oscillator now pointed to the upside, I think it would be relevant to be looking at the 2-day timeframe long variation of this setup as probabilities start to shift in favor of that. Again, maybe want to see one more closure. So I guess that'd be Monday night, which is why last week we were saying, hey, balls in the bears court for right now. If bulls can hold it here until about Monday, Tuesday of this coming week, it's going to shift in favor of the bull laws, and looks like that's actually happening right now. So as you can see, this is the 2-day time frame long setup. There's been 19 prior iterations of this over the full history of Bitcoin. Of those 19, 15 that were with the stochastic oscillator pointed to the upside did play out with a nice upside move, so giving it about almost a 79% strike rate, so a little bit less actually than the short side. In other words, if it's pointed to the downside, short side's a little bit more likely to be fair, which still could very easily happen. Again, if you see Bitcoin below 26,650 by tomorrow night's closure, Monday, that would be a damn good indication for that. Average time for the long sides playing out was about 17.5 days, standard deviation of 7 days, basically a week, and the average return was about just over 28.25%, with a standard deviation of 10%. So giving us a range between about 18% all the way up to 39% almost in this case. So I actually want to go back into the data over here, and let's just kind of play around with numbers, and let's just assume that Bitcoin does really begin the move from here, and it does play out to the upside fashion. Well, if we're looking at the averages, keeping in mind about 28%, what would that look like on top of current price action? That would put Bitcoin at about a little bit above $34,000, on the actual average. If it goes for the bottom end of the first standard deviation, probably looking more towards around 18%, which would put Bitcoin on slightly new highs in this rally, basically retesting the prior highs actually at around $31,500. And on the upper end, if things really get crazy, 38% would put Bitcoin closer to $38,000, which is, in my opinion, kind of best case scenario here for the boo laws. Again, I really do want to see one more closure where this continues to expand on the 2-day timeframe volatility to really officially declare expansion from these levels. But for right now, so far so good, as we do see kind of the double basing that you typically see on these setups, where it comes down first, boom, bases, comes a little comes somewhere around that low, and then the real expansion happens. And in this case, you can see that the 2-day timeframe stochastic, again, right now, as of right now, is pointed to the upside. That does mean that 26,650 is a major pivot on price action. If Bitcoin loses that, downside incredibly likely, and at that point we can apply the short sides stats over here, of which bit of a higher hit rate, actually 84.25% almost for just the short side setups, and average return was about 26%. So that'd be a pretty nasty move to the downside. Obviously, it's still very much within the cards that we do see. I think worst case scenario is like a move somewhere down between about 21 to 22,000 bucks, with areas of interest along the way at about 24.8 or so. But for right now, looks like Bullets have held it here. Just want to see another day or two, and then looking actually a little bit more in their favor, or I would say statistically speaking in their favor. Anyways, now I want to go over some of the macro timeframes here and just kind of put into context where we are in the greater scheme of things, just because things have been really boring throughout this month, just in general, at least in my opinion. And so I just, during these times I like to remind myself, hey, where is the greater picture, so I don't lose sight of that, or at least hopefully don't lose sight of that. And in this case, I like to reference the accumulation and distribution indicator on the monthly time frame. Now, a couple things with this one. The way that I traditionally like to use it is that anytime that we've seen the slope change in the extreme red zone and the extreme green zone, that has correlated with a macro shift in direction. In this case, I'm just plotting out the shifts from down slope to up slope in the red zone, which essentially have called prior macro lows. Basically, anytime that we first saw that happen, which are these green vertical bars right here, that was indicative that the low was already in, and price was still pretty damn close to the low, especially on a closing basis, you can see. And then these blue lines are kind of like the tick, or afterwards, a little bit of a correction typically, as you see in this case right here on the 2012 saga, this case over here very quickly on the 2015 saga, this one over here a little bit less so, I'd say, on 2019, and then certainly on 2020 you see this 3-month or 2-month long correction, I'd say, and very similar to where we're at right now actually as well, compared to 2020 actually. As Bitcoin essentially does bounce off of the 9 exponential, and I do kind of have to look at it from a monthly perspective, that as long as it is above that region, I do just look at this as kind of like a quick correction, but a quick relative to the monthly time frame correction before trying the sideways and up phase, as we do see that the accumulation distribution indicator maintains its positive slope. In fact, it's the most severe positive slope that we've seen in 2 years, actually going back to April of 2022. So I do look at this as rather important, and well, that would be again indicative that higher moves to the downside, whether it's where we're at right now just below 27, or whether it comes down to 24.8 or 21 to 22,000 bucks, are probably going to be opportunities, or at least statistically speaking, historically speaking, these are very likely long-term opportunities if you're in the game for especially multiple years, obviously. Anyways, moving on now, I wanted to once again reference the MVRV ratio over here, and that is again the market capitulation versus the realized cap. And what am I looking at right here? I mean, you don't necessarily need to know that in order to interpret this chart, honestly. It is this. Anytime that we've seen the MVRV get down into the green zone and get that first tick outside of the green zone on a weekly time frame closing basis, that has essentially initiated, the long-term sideways and up trudges. Lows were already in, yada, yada, yada. You get the idea. Yes, there were corrections along the way. In fact, typically, relatively soon after leaving the green zone, all of these ones did correct, except for the 2019 one, unless you consider the Rona dump. But I don't think that really counts in that case. But all the other ones do kind of have the same sort of signature, where you get that first move outside. I'll just kind of zero in on this one right here. First move outside, boom, corrective phase. You can see it on price action, kind of chops around, and then generally speaking goes sideways and up in the following year or so. And are we seeing the same thing over here? Again, I don't really have a reason to believe not. The real question to me is that do we see Bitcoin come back down to that lower $20,000 territory again or not? And as long as the 2-day time frame setup is in this posturing to the upside, which it's just barely right now, to be fair, it really wouldn't take too much to destroy this one in the next day. But as long as that is available, yeah, I'm gonna run with that's more likely. It's just that is statistically speaking more likely. But Monday's gonna be a big one, at least in my opinion. But if you're really gung ho and you're really looking to front run these sort of things, maybe that's something to consider. I don't know. I can't make decisions for you, nor should I be making these decisions for you. You're a fucking grown adult, hopefully. Actually, there's some kids listening to this shit. There was a 15-year-old or 13-year-old emailing Elsa one time. Sounded like a fucking 50-year-old, by the way. Very well spoken. I'm just dude, hold off. Hold off. Just stay on YouTube for right now, man. It's all good. It's a good thing that you're getting started young. But yeah, for all of the miners. That's a term that I should not be saying on YouTube because it sounds very fucking wrong. So you know what? I'm just going to take a sip of this coffee and we're going to get back to the charts in just a second here, okay? I apologize. Oh, that was good, man. Some nice iced Americano action going on right here. Unfortunately, we don't have the Freddo espressos like beautiful Greece, but it's the closest thing that we can get over here. All right. Okay, cool. We've gotten through that. I did want to point out over here that, or do I want to point out over here? Yeah, let's point it out over here as well. 5-day time frame did have a silver cross. This was actually way back on over here in beginning of April. It's when we first kind of spoke about it and leading up into it. But I did want to do a bit of an analysis on the prior 5 silver crosses that we have seen on the 5-day time frame. Silver cross, by the way, is just the 21 and 55. Obviously, the lower period cross above the higher period, generally speaking, going to be bullish and vice versa for bearish. Anyways, you can see all these green vertical bars mark where that cross officially happened. And what I wanted to mark off, or what I wanted to, kind of document right here is that generally speaking, when you get this cross, sideways and up is the name of the game. Corrections are to be bought. And while there has been, I would consider one major fake out that was over here in January of 2020, that still did produce a nice move to the upside, about a 26.25% move to the upside from the actual cross given over the course of 20 days. And the reason why I bring this one up is because even though this one failed, which was, I would say, confirmed when it broke below the 55 right here, that green moving average. It still did have a nice move to the upside, 26.25% basically. And to compare that with what we've seen on this one thus far, we haven't really seen any move to the upside from that cross officially happen. In fact, if we actually just measured it, it was about, I guess on a closing basis, 6.5% or just above 6.5% on literally the next closure. So I don't really look at that as like relevant. Anyways, again, looking at this, I do look at this as more or less viable as long as Bitcoin's above that green moving average. That's 55. And where's it coming in around? Actually low $25,000 territory right now in Bitcoin, seemingly kind of, finding its footing along the 21 right here, which is currently in the mid $26,000 territory, which is where I kind of think things matter more or less for the higher term time frame status the same. As long as Bitcoin's above that 26.5 on a closing basis, probably going to see this one turn to the upside. But below there, that's when the downside becomes not just likely, it becomes, in my opinion, a reality. And again, on a closing basis, which we haven't seen just yet. And at that point, at the very least, just below $25,000, I think would be best case scenario. But risk would remain to the downside somewhere between like 21 to 22. And there would be good reason to believe that actually would happen if that were to occur. But again, that's a big if right now, because obviously Bitcoin's about $600 above. So it's safe, right? $600 is a fucking sneeze on this highly volatile asset. Anyways, so we've gone through that. Did just want to once again check out the 6-month time frame, not closing this month, but closing at the end of next month. Again, higher term time frame day today. But yeah, there is still hidden bullish divergence potential right there. Basically, any sort of a closure above 25,200, the last 6-month high, we're very likely going to see this one, before end of year, work its way into like the mid or deep $30,000 territory. I feel very, very confident in saying that if, again, that happens, but that would be at the end of June, of course. So not necessarily super relevant for like today or tomorrow or even the end of this month of May. Anyways, moving on now. Did just want to check out the monthly stochastic oscillator. Again, it is continuing to remain to the upside. It did actually cross above officially coming into May, the moving average right here, which if I throw on my drawing tools, that would be the second consecutive green vertical bar that you can see on these past iterations. And, generally speaking, that was coming after the official cross the upside, which did mark the low, it being in many cases. And that in that cross above the moving average, as you can see right here, and right here, did kind of lead into that next sort of corrective phase. Now, again, that corrective phase did pretty much always, it did actually always move to the upside after that. So again, are we seeing the beginning of this corrective phase over here? Maybe yes. The 2-month time frame is actually gonna have a chance to freshly cross above, freshly cross up with any sort of a closure above 26,900 or so. Again, that's not coming in this month. It will be coming in next month, unfortunately, though. So it's going to be a long waiting game. But I'd say that if that happens, probably another damn good indication that we do just see Bitcoin kind of level off here, trade sideways into the end of June, and then take off, basically. Anyways, yes, we've gone through that. Maybe one last thing here for the short-term time frame ranges. We'll just reference the 4-hour HPDR indicator right here. In fact, I've went through all the time frames already, and the bottom side of the current range lows are a lot lower than where I thought they would be. They're pretty much all around like low $26,000 territory. Personally speaking, I do think that Bitcoin closing a higher term time frame below 26.5, 26.6, especially if it's like a weekly. That would be good enough for me to be saying, hey, no, Bitcoin's going to have this first major move to the downside, and then maybe we pick up the pieces later on in June or something like that. But for right now, if you just want the numbers as they are, the 4-hour time frame showing bottom side range at 26,200, which it is a 4-hour time frame. If we're using it daily, though, it'd be the same thing. And I do think that it would be appropriate, at least personally speaking, to get bearish on a daily closure below about 26.5 and look for that next major breakdown. But until then, hope still remains for the BULAs. And if we go back over here to the 4-hour time frame, we can see the top side of the range very obviously coming in around about 27,650, meaning that if Bitcoin can just, honestly, I would say even if it can just trade above there, but kind of want to see a closure above there, obviously it's going to be better. That would be a good indication that Bitcoin's going to initiate a move somewhere closer to $29,000, which again, would kind of play hand in hand with the 12-hour setup, which is still very much viable over here, but I won't go over it today. We'll save that one for tomorrow. Anyways, I do want to go over two last things. Two last things while I have you here. This video is probably already long enough. 16 minutes. And they're two things that are opposite of each other. So I'll first bring out the NASDAQ, NASDAQ futures right here, symbol NQ. Anyways, we were looking for this one to make new highs on this week into Friday. We got new highs. In fact, even taking out the August of 2022 highs along the way. Ultimately, I do still think that this one continues probably into June. So if you're looking at these markets as correlated, that being essentially NASDAQ and Bitcoin, that would present a good signal for Bitcoin. Bitcoin typically a laggard of traditional markets, buying off the strength of traditional markets. But in this case, I still think NASDAQ futures have more to go, actually. This is pretty damn good. Barring some sort of like I don't know, maybe they actually do default on the debt ceiling or whatever the fuck, I don't even know what it is. Doesn't really matter, but it will matter if that were to happen. Then perhaps we could see a reverse. But, I feel like that's just a good news story waiting to happen. It's like, do you really think they're going to default on the national debt? We always seem to see this sort of conversation pop up, around these times, and it almost always gets passed through because everyone realizes, what's actually at stake. But again, that would generally bode well for Bitcoin. On the contrary, however, and what I would say is a legitimate concern here would be looking at gold, because Bitcoin has been certainly more correlated with gold on this last move up coming off of the back of the bank failures. They kind of both had that same narrative going on. And gold is very obviously short-term topping to me. Now, long-term, I do think that this one will trade to the north side of the overall range. But in the more short, medium term, I do think that this one does come down further. We do see many drives of bearish divergence on the weekly time frame. 1, 2, 3 drives coming off this last high right here. I think this one probably corrects down, maybe south of 1900 actually. And then perhaps, later on in summer, it does take off again. This is still like pretty good long term, I do think. But for right now, in the short term, does it play out a further corrective move here? Yeah, I think there's a strong probability of that into the end of June. We probably do see this one come down a decent amount lower, with ultimately an upside resolution still within the cards. I still think that this one looks strong into the end of the year, but in the more near term, corrective here. So again, you can see how boring it is on a week like this when I start to bring up these sort of more hypothetical questions. I really don't like looking at things, in this vein, just because like you want to be looking at the asset at hand. It's just there's not too many new things to be looking at right there. So I hope that I presented the picture in the proper way, in a way that actually makes sense. I think tomorrow is going to be a lot more of an interesting day coming into closure, which means that Tuesday's video is going to be a big one. Maybe we see things take off tomorrow as well, but Tuesday probably going to be the day where we do actually have some more decisive things to be saying on a channel like this, where I really want to be taken away from like the sensationalism of everything, right? I'll leave that for the fucking thumbnails. Sorry about that, but it's just the name of the game, unfortunately on YouTube, or for better or worse. But yeah, long term, I do think a lot of things are going to be decided this coming week, probably early on in the week, just as we were kind of postulating last week, and I think things are going to start to come to fruition from here. So that's a good place for me to be leaving off. I should let you know that, of course, we still got the Bybit chill going on. They got 0% on maker fees for derivative contract orders. Plus, you can get the Joolite for free for the first 30 days if you follow the directions in the link in the description below. And then, of course, if you're looking for a new exchange, because maybe you got kicked off of Bybit or some of the other exchanges because they want you to KYC, and you don't want to KYC, well, I don't know why that would be, but perhaps consider Bybit's decentralized exchange arm called Apex. There's another affiliate link to that in the description below as well, which will award you 5% off of your trading fees for the lifetime of your account. All right, sweet. That's a good place for me to be leaving off, which I'll say for the 5th fucking time. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.